Hi. Today, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. And if you missed my January TBR, I read all books that have movies based on them. I decided this year that I'm going to theme all of my reading months because I just thought that would be fun. And so for January, I decided to read books that have movies based off them and then watch the movies after. So I feel like this video is going to be a little bit longer than a normal wrap-up. Especially because I read 6 books, on top of the fact that I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the movies as well. Not a lot, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I thought I'd do like my little summary opinion about the adaptations. The first book that I read in January was James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl, which I absolutely adored. I actually read this in grade 5. So this is technically a reread for me, but I didn't remember anything from it. All I remembered was, the centipede and all of his shoes and about the fact that he doesn't actually have 100 legs. Centipedes don't have 100 legs. I forget how many. They have 42 or something like that. But anyway, that was all I remembered from it. So it was basically like reading it for the first time, and it was absolutely delightful. I feel like Roald Dahl books are a little hit and miss with how enjoyable they are for adults. There are some that are very clearly written for little children, and some that are, I feel like, written with the idea that they're going to be reading them with their parents. So there's a good chunk of them that have very smart humor and have a little bit more to the story. I feel like this one has a little bit less to the story than, say, Matilda or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Even this one's like a little bit younger, but it was still fabulous. I thought it was hilarious. So basically, if you don't know the story of James and the Giant Peach, it's about a boy named James whose parents get eaten by a rhino. And so he goes to live with his terrible, awful, evil aunts, and they're terrible to him, and they treat him awfully. And he ends up meeting a man who gives him these little, I think they were alligator tongues, and he says that if he drinks them in a certain amount of time, if he puts them in something and drinks them within a certain amount of time, then magical things will happen to him. But that he has to make sure he does it, because the magical things will happen to whoever or whatever consumes them. And he ends up dropping them under this old dead peach tree in his yard, and so it ends up growing a big, huge, giant peach, like a peach like the size of a house. And so he ends up going inside the peach and meeting some insects and such that were in the soil as well, so they got the magic as well, so they're human-sized and can talk, and the peach rolls away, and they go on a big adventure in a giant peach, and it's fantastic. It has illustrations in it, one of which I would like larger and framed because it makes me laugh hysterically every single time I look at it. It is so funny. The idea, I can't. And I can't tell you why. I can't show you the picture. It's a bit of a spoiler, so I'm not going to, but I think it's hilarious. And I showed it to like 4 of my friends, I think, and laughed hysterically every single time. It's so funny. This book was so good. I enjoyed it, and I read it in a day. And then I immediately watched the movie. I didn't like the movie. I didn't like it. I also think it's funny how different it was from the book. Like, it's a really short book. It's easy to make it the same. They could have made it the same, and it would have been better. At first, going into it as well, I was a little skeptical because I knew it was a musical, and I was like, why would they make it a musical? There are songs in this book. They do sing songs. So it makes sense, except that they do not sing the songs in the movie that they sing in the book. So, why? I also didn't think it was good as a musical. Like, there was nothing good about the songs. Like, none of them were good singers. The songs were not good. I didn't like the movie very much at all. It was whatever. Then I read The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, and I gave this 5 stars as well. I loved this so much. I was not expecting to like this as much as I did. I was just a little curious. I actually had no plan on reading this whatsoever. And when the movie was coming out, I was planning on watching the movie without reading the book, so that I would just enjoy the movie for what it was and just have nothing to compare it to. But then I saw this at a used bookstore, and I was like, might as well. So I literally was just like, whatever, might as well read it. That was what I had going into it. And oh my god, it was so good. So, let me explain to you what it's about if you don't know what it's about. I feel like this was really popular on BookTube when it came out, so there's probably a lot of you who know what it's about. But maybe some of you don't, because I didn't really. So this takes place on a planet that is not Earth. where there are only male humans and animals. So there are no girls or women. It's just men and boy. And on top of the fact that there are no girls, everybody can hear and see each other's thoughts, as well as animals, and animals can talk on top of that. So everybody is in everybody's business all the time. This follows a boy named Todd, who is turning 13, and basically in this society, when you turn 13, you're considered a man, and he is the last person to become a man. So because there's no women in this world, there's no way for population to continue. All of the women died when they first came onto this planet. There was a sickness that killed all of the girls and the women, but not the boys and the men. So he's basically the last child left. And then people are just going to die off after that. But he's really excited to turn 13. He's really excited to become a man. But as he is in the forest with his dog, Manchi, who's fabulous, by the way, and can talk, because all the animals can talk, he comes across a spot in the forest where you cannot hear anything. Like, you can't hear anybody's thoughts or see anybody's thoughts. It's completely quiet. And so he runs home, trying really hard not to think about it, because he doesn't want anybody else to know about it. He thinks it maybe is a bad thing. And then the people who raised him are like, you need to get out of here right now. You need to leave before you turn 13. You cannot do the thing that people do when they turn 13, and people are going to be after you, and you need to run away. And he's like, what? So he runs away. People are after him. And then he comes across a girl. And not only is it a girl, he also cannot hear her thoughts. What? So it's very, very exciting. It's very adventurous. It's very funny. I also loved the way they did the thoughts. So it's called noise because sometimes you can pick out what people are saying in their heads. Sometimes you can understand, but sometimes there's too much going on in everybody's heads and you can hear it everywhere from everyone. So it's just noise. And so they call everyone's thoughts their noise. And I loved the way their noise was done. So I'll show you some examples. That's how, whenever there's like noise that's really important to the story, or to like noise that's bothering Todd, that's how it's written. If there's any that he's like paying attention to and that he's talking about down here. So I really liked that. So it was super exciting. I read this in 2.5 days. Like all I wanted to do was read this. It was so good. I loved Todd. I loved like the kind of overall message and everything. Even like the title makes sense, which at first I was like, I don't get it. But read it, you'll get it. It was really good. I would love to read the second one. So then I watched the movie. The movie is a standalone. So this is a part of a trilogy. The movie is just one movie. It's just based off the first book, and they're not going to make any other movies.
Editing that here. I suck. I also forgot to mention that the movie is called Chaos Walking, which is the name of the book trilogy. Which makes sense, since the stuff that makes the title of the first book make sense is not in the movie. So it makes sense that they called it Chaos Walking and named it after the entire trilogy instead of after the first book, because Chaos Walking is like basically the concept of the story, and that's what they captured in the movie instead of the precise story of the first book, if that makes any sense.
So in order for it to work as a standalone, they had to change the story quite a bit. And there was a lot of really important parts of the story in here that were taken out of the movie because they do not get resolved in this book, and you know they're going to continue to be a problem in the next books. And so in order for that to be they can't talk about those things in the movie if it's not going to be resolved by the end, right? So there's a lot of important details and interesting aspects of the story in this that are taken out of the movie. And then, like, even the reason he's being chased is a little bit different. The girl's story is different. It's quite different in order for it to work as a standalone. But they did a really good job, and I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the way the noise was portrayed in the movie. I thought it was so well done. Besides the fact that I feel like Todd was a very different character in the movie compared to the book, there were a few parts where they were the same kind of person and where they felt like they had the same kind of goals and the same thoughts about things, but overall they were very different people. Besides the fact that Todd was really different, and obviously that the story was pretty different, I feel like it had a lot of the same like atmosphere and the same vibes. And I really liked that about it. And there were some scenes that weren't the same as the book, but like I knew what scene they were pulling from the book. Like I was like, that's supposed to be this scene. Like it's not the same, but I see what they're doing. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed the movie. I think I still did like the book better just because there was a lot in the book that I really liked that wasn't in the movie. So there was like less to enjoy, I guess. But I thought it was a really good movie.
Yeah, I suck. Also, in the movie, the animals didn't talk. Why? Who decided this?
The next book that I read was another reread for me. I read it in high school. Hated it. I was, a few years ago, challenged to read it again as an adult, that I would probably have different views on it, and I would probably like it more. I did have different views on it. But, just views that made me hate it even more than I did in high school. And that was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. When I read it in high school and I hated it, I think I just thought it was boring. And sometimes I couldn't really pick up what was happening because of the way it was written. So I was like, I don't know what's happening a lot of the times, and it's boring. And that's why I didn't like it. I have many reasons as to why I didn't like it this time. For one, okay, this book is really short. It is less than 200 pages, and it is wordy as fuck. I'm sure you can imagine a book this short that is wordy as fuck, has no story. There's no story. There are just things that happen. Things that happen that are not even pieced together in a way that makes it flow. It's just a book where things happen. And also because it was so wordy, sometimes, yes, it was a little hard to understand what was happening. Like a very important scene at the end, I was like, wait a second, what? And I had to go back and read it again. And I'm not going to spoil it just in case you don't know and you want to read it. I don't want to spoil. I feel like everybody knows, but just in case, I'm not gonna. But it was a very important part. And I was like, wait, what? That was not explained well. Because this author was trying too hard to make his writing pretty, I guess. I don't know. So those. Also, the narrator, Nick, went on for 2 whole pages literally just listing people that he has seen attend Gatsby's parties. Sometimes there would be a sentence or two about the people, but it was basically 2 pages of names. Also, because it was so wordy and it was so short, so there was no room to actually make these scenes piece together like an actual coherent story. There was also no room for character development. There was no room for reasons for these scenes to make sense. I wasn't rooting for any characters for any of their love to work out with these other characters, because we didn't get to watch any of it play out. And on top of that, all of these characters were horrible people. They were all cheating on each other, and lying to each other. And they were all racist and sexist, and misogynistic. And I know the racist and the misogynistic thing is, a product of its time. I know that. It's not like the author is racist today. But, on top of the fact that I didn't like this book, and I didn't like the characters, and I felt like it had no story, it was also racist and misogynistic. So it was there were no redeeming qualities except for 2 scenes. 2 tiny little scenes that I thought were funny that were not even in the movie. Okay, so then I watched the movie, which I still wasn't a huge fan of. I enjoyed it more than I did enjoy reading the book. But the movie was, exactly the same as the book. It was exactly the same, except for the 2 scenes that I thought were funny that weren't in it. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. But yeah, it was literally exactly the same. Some of the conversations were word for word from the book. Pretty much besides those 2 scenes, every scene that was in the book was in the movie. The only thing that made the movie better than the book was that the movie was well done. And it was well put together. It was very aesthetically pleasing. The acting was great. And because the movie was over 2 hours long, there was room to piece the scenes together to make it more of a coherent story. So, this is a no for me. This got 1 star. Then I read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really precious. The Secret Garden is about a girl named Mary who lived in India with her parents who didn't care about her. And so she didn't even really know her parents. They weren't around at all. And basically everyone in her village dies. They all get some kind of plague. I forget what the sickness was, but they all get sick. Everybody dies, except for her, because she's just in her room by herself. She's just waiting for somebody to come wait on her, and nobody does because they all die. So then she ends up going to live with her uncle, who she doesn't know, in England, in this big, huge, giant mansion in the middle of nowhere, basically. Like, it's just surrounded by moors. She is just like a terrible little girl who is selfish and racist. She is basically, like, has to fend for herself, basically. Like, people bring her meals, but other than that, she has to entertain herself and do things herself, which she's not used to. She's very snotty about it, but she ends up exploring the grounds and, through talking to people and exploring, finding a garden that has been locked up and has been locked up for the last 10 years because her aunt, her uncle's wife, died in the garden, and she loved the garden, and so he doesn't want anybody to go in there anymore. But she ends up finding a key for it and going inside the garden and bringing it back to life. But she has to do it secretly because she knows that he doesn't want anybody in there. That's why it was locked. So it's about her kind of like growing as a person and helping another terrible person grow as a person, her cousin, who's a terrible, rotten little boy. And then she also becomes friends with her maid's little younger brother as well. So the three of them build this garden in secret. It's super sweet, and it has great character development, and it has a nice little story. Like, they're trying to figure out stuff about like why her cousin is sick all the time, and there's a little bit about trying to get her uncle, so her cousin's dad, to come home because he's never there. So there's like a little bit of, there's more than just them building this garden, but it was a very sweet story, and it was very cute, and it was funny, and it was really nice. So now there was racism, like very just like casually mentioned racism as if it was like everyday talk. Some of it was definitely hatred, and some of it wasn't, and it wasn't, like, the characters were not intending to be mean, but it was still obviously not okay. And there was also a couple mentions of, like, casual abuse in it as well, which was cringy, but other than that, it was really sweet, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I watched the original movie from 1993 that I loved as a kid, and it was super different from the book. And I feel like the book is way better. Like, some of the things that happened made more sense the way they happened in the book than the way they happened in the movie. There were a few things that happened in the movie that were, like, a little out of place. But I still liked the movie. It wasn't quite as magical as it was when I watched it when I was a kid, which is a little sad. But I think part of that was because I had the book fresh in my mind, and I was just, for some reason, expecting it to be closer to the book than it was. And so that's what ruined it a little bit for me, I think. But it was still a sweet movie. It was still cute. I would still watch it again for, like, nostalgic reasons. And then I watched the remake, which I do regret doing. It was absolutely not the same as the book. Also, this book takes place in, like, 1901 or something like that. And the movie, the remake, takes place after World War II. What? Why? That's already less magical. So, yeah, I did not enjoy the remake whatsoever. We're just going to leave it at that. I read The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick, which I enjoyed. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really good. This is about a guy named Pat who has just been released from a psychiatric hospital because of something that happened many years ago that he thinks was only a few months ago, after, like, splitting up from his wife. And he is under the impression throughout a big portion of this book that him and his wife are going to get back together. And he's trying really hard to better himself as a person so that she'll want him back. And so it's about that, and also this girl that lives nearby that he meets, and she kind of, like, stalks him a little bit, but doesn't really say why. She just, like, follows him when he goes running. And so there's, like, a little bit about, like, I don't want to say, like, what her plan is, because it doesn't really get revealed until pretty far into the story. But they end up kind of helping each other through their issues and stuff. And it was nice. It was a nice story. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I did really enjoy it. Some of it was funny, and some of it was like heartwarming. It was good. And then I watched the movie. The movie was super different. I didn't like the movie all that much. Like, I thought it was good, but for some reason, again, I thought it was going to be closer to the book, because it's one of those things that's not hard to follow the book. Like, it wouldn't have been difficult. It would have translated to the screen easily. And they were like, no, we're going to change it. And the thing is, it's like, yep, it was different, but it was also, like, different in a not as good way. Like, there were a few things that I was like, why would they do that? Why would they make the person have that happen to them instead? That's not good. Like, there was a couple things that were, I don't know how to, like, his dad is bad, but in a different way. Like, in the book, his dad is, like, emotionally abusive to him. He's awful. He is an awful person in the book. And in the movie, his dad is just, like, a gambling addict. And so he hurts him in some of those ways. So it's, like, it's different. It's interesting. And then also his brother and his therapist had much larger roles in the book. And I loved them both in the book. And they weren't really in the movie very much. And that made me sad, because they were really great characters. So I feel like if you just watch the movie without reading the book, it would be more enjoyable. Like, there's nothing wrong with the movie. It's a good movie. But I thought the book was way better. I did also try reading The Time Traveler's Wife, and I had to stop reading that about 70 pages in. There were definitely some pedophile vibes going on. I was not... Nope. Didn't want to have any part in that. So I stopped reading that. And because I had read 5 books that had movies based on them, and I don't have very many more books with movies based on them, and they're not really ones I was in the mood to read, so I just thought I'd take a freebie and read something away from the theme. And I read 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This book is about a girl whose stepmother casts a spell, curse, whatever, on her and her 6 brothers. So she turns her brothers into cranes, and puts a bowl on the girl, Shiori. Her name is Shiori. So she puts a bowl on Shiori's head, and that is, like, stuck there. So it covers the top half of her face so that nobody can recognize her. And then also part of the spell that she tells her is that if she utters any words or noises, basically, it will kill one of her brothers. So she only has to make some kind of noise 6 times, and all of her brothers will die. And then they're thrown out into the wilderness. And so it's very difficult for them to get back and to get help, because her brothers are cranes. So people are like, birds. Those aren't people. And nobody will recognize Shiori because she has a bowl over her head, and she also can't tell them who she is because then her brothers will die. So it's about them trying to figure out how to break that spell and what happens to them along the way. I gave this 3 stars, maybe 3.5 stars. I'm not sure. I feel like maybe 3.5, but I don't know. It was good, but it wasn't, like, super good. Like, I don't know. I really enjoyed the first chunk. And the first chunk, I thought, I was like, well, if it goes at this rate, it's probably going to be a 4-star, solid 4-star book. Like, I'm really enjoying this. But then there was a big chunk in the middle that I just was not very interested in. It was like, it really slowed down, and it was slow in, like, a way for me that I didn't enjoy. Because I don't mind slow stories as long as there's, like, as long as it's, like, working towards something and there's, like, clear character development. But for me in this, I felt like it was just this character doing stuff to pass the time. And I feel like maybe if the book was, like, 100 pages shorter, which I know is kind of a lot, but I feel like if it was 100 pages shorter, it would have been so much better. For me, at least. I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And then the last chunk was pretty exciting and good, and I was enjoying it, but there was some explanations to some of, like, the twists and stuff that I found a little confusing, and sometimes a little hard to grasp onto, which could just be a me thing, like being dumb, I don't know. Overall, it was a good book, and I didn't think it was badly written in any way. I enjoyed the writing. No, I only have 4 tabs, but there was some stuff that was funny, some stuff that was sweet, and I also loved the, like, guy in it. I don't want to give anything away because there's, like, some character reveals and stuff that are surprises and stuff like that, but the guy that we're supposed to loved him. And I did like the main character as well. Like, she was pretty cool. And I do want to read the second one. I'm not like in a rush to get it. I'm not super excited for it, but I do want to. So the next time I'm at the bookstore, if I see it there, I will purchase it and read it, because I think it's going to be interesting. And obviously that did not have a movie that I watched to compare it to. But those are all the books that I read in January. What a good reading month. I mean, I was just like on the couch the whole month, so that's why. So that's all. Have a good day. Bye.